So I will be speaking with you all today about navigating the game development industry. Huzzah! And I recognize that there are many different paths there. So I will be dividing it into sort of two sections, talking about what it looks like to have a successful AAA development career and what it looks like to have a successful indie development career, including running your own studio, and how you can sort of optimize for both of those. First, I guess I will start with an introduction, since you all did such wonderful introductions. Hi, my name is Renee Gittins. I'm Zach Whaley's wife. Like I said, that's a new title I acquired recently. I currently lead my own game studio, Stumbling Cat, and I sit on the International Game Developers Association's board as the alumni board chair. Prior to this, I was the general manager of Phoenix Labs Vancouver, and prior to that, I was executive director of the IGDA. I have a very strange career throughout the game development sphere, including engineering, production, product management, marketing, and even games journalism. So real scattershot across there. I've published a lot of white papers. They're all free for you to read online. I've also created the Game Dev Foundry resources. And in 2020, Forbes listed me on the 30 under 30 for games, but I am not under 30 anymore, so expired title. In short, these are titles which I have worked on directly, and I've actually done a ton of different mentorship and consulting. This is not even close to all those titles, but these are some of the other products that I helped out with. And most notably, I developed and published my own game, Potions, A Curious Tale. All right, so I want to start with just some general advice. It doesn't matter what you're trying to do, whether it's being a solo indie dev or if it's trying to find a lifelong career at your favorite AAA game studio. The number one thing that you can do to help your career is to network with others. And in fact, this cohort is a great opportunity to do that. You should make sure that you're exchanging information with the other folks in the cohort, and that you keep tabs on each other. Not necessarily talking to them all the time, but connect on LinkedIn, see what they're up to, and plant those seeds. Because in general, the people you connect with today are going to be your advisors, your mentors, your job opportunities in 10 years from now. So making more and more of those connections that you can right now is super important, not only to find your first job, but to continue the rest of your career. And it's not always people that just help you with specifically, your own success as a individual professional getting paid money to do what you do. You will find that you make connections with people who go work for platform holders like Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft, and they can help you get, your game published. Or you might go make friends. Like one of my college friends works for a publisher and has given me advice on funding before. There's really no need to sort of narrow your connections to your current discipline. Really just sort of a wide scattershot of connections is going to benefit you most. So try to go to local events, try to go online events, try to connect with people, and definitely use LinkedIn. It is both beneficial to have deep knowledge in a discipline in games, being a specialist. I know that most of you are engineers, so engineering's one, production's one, game design's one. And some specialization of that is perfectly fine as well, like animation rigging. But in order to be a successful game developer, you still need to collaborate with others. And I'm sure you're finding that a lot on your projects currently. Even as nearly a solo developer, you're still going to be working with people who are going to either publish your game or help you with platforms or make your capsule art on Steam or maybe make your music. So the ability to talk with other disciplines, to understand their needs, their tools, their terminology is going to be hugely beneficial to you. In fact, I recommend if you ever do a game jam to sign up in a discipline that you don't normally do. Like if you're normally an engineer, sign up as an artist. you will find a lot of value just being an artist for a weekend and understanding what that pipeline looks like, what you're expected to do, how that work is integrated into a game. One of the other pieces of advice that I think is super important is to take advantage of opportunities. You all, of course, are taking advantage of the opportunity of this cohort right now. You're building up real project experience, and that's great. And similarly, I recommend putting yourself out there for opportunities that might seem like a bit of a stretch or uncomfortable. For example, I was only like a year and a half into the game development industry when I gave my first game industry talk. And it was uncomfortable, and I wasn't 100% confident in everything that I was trying to explain, but it was a really valuable experience. And the more that you put yourself out there applying for scholarships or speaking opportunities or just writing a blog on LinkedIn, the more that you will build your knowledge and sort of demonstrate your knowledge to others as well. And speaking of demonstrating that knowledge, a portfolio of work is super important. You might not need to share your code all the time. In fact, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but just being able to say, I worked on these projects, this is what I contributed, and have that in addition to your resume. Because really that ability to show that you've worked with others and you've brought things to ship is so much more important than any college degree or a single job role that you have on your resume itself. Now, these are all great for building up a bunch of connections and, technical skills. But as someone who's helped hire many people, I want to note that there are some specific qualities that I look for when hiring somebody. And this is in the order that I look for them. The first thing I look for is someone who is eager to learn and is a self-starter, someone who is willing to tackle a problem, even if it's a problem they've never seen before. They're willing to Google something. They're willing to ask for help. They're willing to not look at a problem and say, I've never seen this before. I don't know what to do. I'll just sit around until someone asks for a status update. That they get excited and they dig into it, and that they try to figure out how to solve it, break it down into components, whatever that approach is. As game development is iterative, it is so important to have somebody who can both accept criticism and provide critical feedback. It is so humbling to realize that the number one valuable thing that you can get as a game developer is critical feedback. Especially if you're starting on your own personal projects, you might feel overly protective of them, or you might dismiss feedback that you get. But eventually you'll realize that that is like the true golden peach that you are aiming for. And so I definitely, when I'm hiring somebody, I make sure that they can both accept criticism and provide criticism, because I want to have a teammate who is engaged, who is willing to give feedback on the process. Because not only are games iterative in terms of game design, mechanics, etc., but so is the process of game development. No one way of leadership or production or communication is going to work perfectly for every project or every stage of a single project. And so getting that constant feedback is really important to ensuring that a team works well. Then I make sure that they are in general compatible with the team. This doesn't mean they need to have the same opinions or personalities or anything like that. It's just occasionally you can get some really bad personality clashes. And so I try to avoid that. And then finally, I look for competency. Because if I have someone who is eager to learn, is able to take feedback, is going to work well with others, they're going to get to that competency really fast. If I have someone who is very competent, but stuck in their ways, doesn't want to learn new tools, is going to fight with others, all of that competency is nearly useless, because they're going to drag the team down more than they're going to support it. So these soft skills and being able to show these in an interview, whether that's with for a job position or even like with press, is going to be so important to your career, both today and in the future. And in general, don't be a jerk. The games industry is small. Nobody likes working with jerks. Don't get a reputation for being a jerk. We all have our learning moments and improve over time, but you really, really don't want to burn bridges along your way, because that will absolutely hurt you just as much as networking will help you. Finally, one thing that I like doing, and this is if you have the bandwidth for it, I love giving back to others. Like I said, I gave my first talk very early in my career, but every single time you take what you've learned and figure out how to process that into shareable information for others, you're going through a wonderful process of really cementing that information to you. And in the process of sharing it with others, you are establishing yourself as a leader in whatever you're doing. You don't need to know a lot. Just think about what you didn't know 10 days ago. I am sure that you've had some learnings that would be valuable to share with others. And getting into the practice of sharing those learnings is wonderful practice for mentorship, for leadership, for building up, sort of your personal brand, and for ensuring your continued success within games. All right. With that out of the way, let me go into a quick little section here about just indie versus AAA. I will say that the number one way to get a game dev panel into an argument is to ask them to define either of those. But we'll just sort of roll with it. So all generalizations are dangerous, including this one. So what is AAA? You pretty much all know this. These are titles that are generally distributed by large publishers that have a high budget of development, high budget for marketing, and they are going to be quite high profile because of those two things. In general, they are made with teams of 100 plus developers. On the other hand, we have indie developers. Indie developers generally have no publisher backing, though more and more have been backed by publishers. They generally have a very low budget for development, zero or low budget marketing, and they tend to be between 1 to 10 developers, depending on how you count them. Maybe there's more outsourcers, et cetera, et cetera. This, of course, is all a little fuzzy. My own title, not a solo project, but one mostly worked on by me with some additional contractors. That's definitely an indie game. Dauntless, a giant MMO Monster Hunter style title with tons of players, tons of content, live service, etc. It's pretty much definitely AAA. Fae Farm, which is also made by Phoenix Labs, creators of Dauntless, that's a little unclear. It was mostly 3 people during the majority of its development, and it ramped up to 40 towards the end and was made a bit more of a high budget project. Is that AAA? Is that indie? Probably neither. There are other terms that folks like to use, AA, III, quadruple A, whatever that is. And of course, there's also mobile games and casual games. Is Candy Crush a AAA title? I don't think it really matters, honestly. All right. So with those rough definitions in mind, I wanted to give some specific advice. For indie development, really what the beauty is you wear a lot of hats. As I said, it is really beautiful and beneficial to have a breadth of knowledge across disciplines, and indie dev is certainly going to get you there real fast. There are a few developers on the team, so each of those developers has more responsibilities across a broader set of things. You will build a very broad knowledge set, and you will feel very integrated into your whole team. You will know everyone's names. You will know what they are working on. You're really going to feel the whole heartbeat of the title progressing forward. And it's going to progress forward really fast. Small teams have few barriers, can do quick iteration, and so you are going to be learning new things, implementing new things constantly. The advantages of this is you have huge impact and ownership. You get to feel like you've really made this game. You're going to have impact on the game itself, on the culture of the studio, and really the success of the whole team. You having a good day is going to be impactful just as much as you having a bad day is going to be impactful on the whole studio itself. There is a lot of flexibility in indie dev because generally people are not siloed into specific disciplines or responsibilities. And so it allows you to sort of flow through different areas of interest and project needs. The disadvantages is that indie dev in general is quite high risk. Lots of times people are working on indie dev projects with very minimal funding or with nearly no funding and looking for a payout at the end. Overall, indies tend to make less money, and they are generally seen by some people who are hiring managers as less notable on the resume. I don't agree with them, but I have definitely found that even if you had a successful-ish indie title, some people will just be like, well, did you ship any AAA games? And that's the only thing I judge on. So be warned that that is some bias amongst the industry hiring managers, at least some of them. The other problem with indie is you don't really have a career ladder. You are generally working on an indie project or running an indie project, and you're not going to be going through junior, mid-level, senior, principal, lead positions. It is going to be, you are the animator or you are the gameplay engineer. So that can be a little rough if you're looking to really, grow your career, dive into a specialization, get experience, being a manager of large teams, etc. Okay, so how do you grow? Well, you gain more skills across the areas that you are touching. You build connections with other indies, with those platform holders and publishers and press. So if you want to run your own team, you can go into that, owning your own team, company ownership, whether that's the full company or you're sharing it amongst co-owners. And a really nice thing that people don't consider about indie dev is the more indie games you publish, the more passive income you can actually generate. So generally, like most of a title's sales, at least 50% of its sales are in the first year, but then there's trickle income every single month for years and years afterwards. So the more indie titles you publish earlier in your career, the more passive income you will have later as you get older as well. My recommended keys to success for being a successful indie is to openly share information. That's really the case in the games industry in general. You'll find people are very willing to share information, and indies are super willing. If you can prove that you are a verified whatever console developer, you can talk to other console developers and hear about their best approaches, or there's great resources for marketing, and how to market a game has like people exchanging their sales numbers and marketing campaigns on their Discord and things like that. I would definitely recommend finding a mentor, particularly an indie mentor if you want to have a successful indie studio. And definitely don't limit, again, who you connect with. I recommend connecting with people like both in proper game development roles. So you can ask an expert for help with a new animation system, and for connecting with all of those tertiary people, localization, conference organizers, press, influencers, etc. And one of the things that is going to really help you if you want to be a full-time indie, whether it's running your studio or not, is live below your means and build a safety net, because like I said, indie is particularly risky. Final advice for running an indie game is basically everything I didn't do for my own title. You want to ensure that you have a small and manageable scope. Ideally, your first game should have a short development cycle that really focuses on one or two core mechanics. I doubt anyone here is prone to this, but historically, when I talk to people who are trying to make their first game, there's a lot of people who just want to build a massive world with a ton of dialogue and backstory, and that is often a lot to handle. I'd recommend having something fun and straightforward. We're thinking like slightly more advanced than Pong level, not like all of the Skyrim quests ever level. And it really helps, therefore, to avoid non-critical text and writing, because localization is also great. All right. So the other side of the coin, AAA development, you get to wear one really, really cool hat. And it's going to be focused and deep. Maybe you're going to be a graphics programmer. Maybe you are going to be a character artist, and all you are is doing 3D character models based on concept art that you are provided. In general, the way that AAA companies are structured is both with a department focus, so like all the people in your specialization, and then sort of pods, strike teams that work cross-discipline on a particular feature or section of the game. So you will probably have a director or lead in your discipline that you can look up to, but then you're probably going to be on a team with an artist and a designer, and you're all going to be focused on making the inventory system or something like that. And it's not just the engineering side of it, but it's also the UI side, the UX, the audio, etc. Of course, with all large companies, there are corporate structures. So you're going to have many more layers of management, of administration. And there will be both bureaucracy that you'll have to deal with in that case, but there's also going to be built-in mentorship. Having someone in your discipline that you get to learn from, just as you are learning from mentors right now, can be very, very valuable to building up your initial skill set, because you will have somebody whose job is to make you more efficient and more successful in that area of focus. So that's a big advantage, mentorship and growth. It is really hard to deny the focused mentorship and experience that you can get at a large company. In general, you will also find that there's higher pay and more stability. The games industry is quite unstable right now in general, but this does tend to, over time, ring true. If you work on a large title, it does tend to be flashier on the resume, and every child won't ask you if you worked on Fortnite, if you actually have a title that you can say when they ask. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked if I work on Fortnite. And in general, you will have great computers, good software. You will have access to the cutting edge. Maybe you'll have a mocap studio in your office. There's a lot of really cool toys you might get to play with while working at a larger company. On the downsides, you're going to have limited ownership and impact. You might be stuck on a very small section of a very large title and feel that you're not really contributing that much to the game. You won't feel like, oh, this is my game. You're like, yeah, I worked on that lava level, whatever. That can make you feel like a cog in the machine. Also, having so much focus can really limit the scope of your skills that you're growing. You will learn those skills very well and get a lot of experience and mentorship on it, but you might not get the breadth of skills that you need to then go start your own company easily. There's also going to be a lot more legal restrictions, and this is something that I've run into as someone who worked on an indie project on the side. Many studios don't want you to do moonlighting. They won't always give you the ability to take leave to travel for conferences. They might not want you even going or talking at conferences unless you go through media training, which they might not be willing to give you. And so that can be very limiting if you're looking at like hypercharging your career by going out and doing a bunch of networking and talking and things like that. As I mentioned before, it has a very structured growth path generally in AAA. You're going to come in as an associate or junior, and then you'll be mid-level, and then you'll be senior and principal or lead if you go the leadership path. If you do go a leadership path, you will go from lead to director, perhaps VP, and then C whatever, CTO, CO, C whatever title. You can, of course, get specialization, as I talked about before, and you will find that AAA roles tend to start more generalized, and then as you level up your career, you'll get more and more specialized with time. There are opportunities to swap sort of the way that you're specializing, or even swap full disciplines, but it is much harder to do within AAA. All right. So how are you successful in AAA? Well, understand how your company evaluates people. A lot of times they have grading rubrics, and it helps to read over that not just the week before there's an evaluation, but once a week. Go over it, make sure you're pushing yourself in the ways that they evaluate for promotions, and engage with your manager to ensure that you are successfully growing along those. A lot of times, you have to take it into your own hands to ensure that you are moving yourself forward. And you'll need to advocate for yourself. You'll need to say, hey, I've met these qualifications in this rubric. I would like to be considered for a promotion, or I'm clearly surpassing expectations. I would love it if I could get a raise. It can feel very awkward to do in your career, but it is worth it. It is necessary, because the only other way to get those raises and promotions is generally by changing companies, which is its own type of stress. You will find that working with other people in AAA is still important. So figuring out how to support your teammates and the other teams you're working with. You don't want to ever have sort of like that back end team, oof, they're hard to work with, I'm going to throw shade their way. You want to have positive relationships because it will definitely help you and your team and your product. And my number one piece of advice when it comes to approaching things like that is reframing everything as us versus the problem. Don't try to get in conflicts. Don't argue with opinions. Search for common goals and understandings. If you find someone getting hot-headed or really impassioned about something, say, hey, I'm glad you're feeling passionate about it. Let's take a step back. What are we trying to solve here? And what are our options to solve that? Helps remove a lot of emotion from it. All right. So how about you? I recommend that you think about these things. How do you grow best? Do you grow best through mentorship, or do you grow best from just doing things? Would you prefer to work on a really well-known title or one that you've had a lot of input in? Where do you want to be in 10 years? If you in 10 years want to run your own studio, but you work well with mentorship right now, it is perfectly fine to start in AAA and build additional skills by doing game jams and other things, and then moving over to running your own studio later. You don't have to be indie the whole time. And if you're particularly passionate about a team or IP, use that to your advantage. Apply to that team. You might sour your love of the IP, but I think it's worthwhile to see how that sausage is made. I also wanted to note that when you are in an interview, even today, when the job opportunities are scarce, you should make sure that you are interviewing them. It is a two-way process, and this will make you seem a more engaged, more valuable potential team member. Ask them, these are some example questions, but look them up on LinkedIn. See if there's any news that the team or studio has been in recently. See what their current products are, and if you have any questions about where they're going with them or what the rumblings are online. And ask questions about your success, how you are going to be successful at their studio. You never want to get to the 45-minute mark out of your hour talking with somebody and have them say, do you have any questions? And you say, no, I think I'm good. Because that shows disinterest. It shows, lack of engagement. It shows you haven't really considered your role there, because you absolutely should come with questions. And I recommend preparing those questions before time, just in case you decide to have a brain fart and can't remember them in the moment. All right. So what you need to do for your best foot forward: got to make a portfolio that shows your best work. This is more relevant to artists, but you will be judged by the worst thing in your portfolio. And that's fine if it's a game that you all publish together. But if you are an artist, or if you're showing your, your GitHub and you have like poorly written code in there. Like, don't do that. Remove that because you will be judged by your worst thing in there. You should network and make connections, and that will propel your career. Research the company and those you're going to speak to for your interviews, and always be humble and confident and kind. All right. So my final recommendation for you is to make yourself a personal plan. And I do that by taking a business plan and making it towards personal. What do you hope to gain? Do you hope to make games for the rest of your life and you don't care if it's for others or for yourself? Do you hope to make your dream game? Do you hope to learn a new skill? Do you hope to be lauded as the best game designer to ever exist? Figure out what that goal is. And then figure out your KPIs or key performance indicators, which are measurable things that you can do on that path. That could be read a chapter a day, push 3 Git commits on your project a day, speak once a quarter publicly, write a dev blog once a month, whatever that is that's pushing you towards that business case goal. When you are talking to others, think about your value proposition. And this is true for solo indie devs as much as anyone else. What are you good at? Why should people care about what you are doing, who you are? How are you going to let people know? How are you going to prove yourself? How are you going to demonstrate to the world that you are a good engineer, that you make fun mechanics, that you have great art? And then finally, how do you keep that ongoing? Burnout is so common in the games industry. Imposter syndrome is so common in the games industry. How are you going to support yourself? Because working 80 hours a week is not going to do it. Don't ever push yourself to do things that you wouldn't expect of a team member, because it sets yourself up for failure. So think about it. Do you need to exercise every other day to stay happy? Do you need to keep a chocolate bar at your desk because it just helps to have a little bite of chocolate when you're stressed? Figure out the things that you can do to support yourself, and it will help you so much in the long term. All right.